Welcome to this animation video. We're going to talk about Cels, we're going to talk about model sheets, we're going to talk about in-between scripts, storyboards, all the different components that go into making an animated video. This, first up here, we have a model sheet of Homer Simpson. So this shows the character from every direction, basically, so that way an animator can make sure they're representing Homer's body correctly in every direction. Here we have a model sheet with Bart. You have the little turnarounds here. You have some other classic poses for him, as well as some examples of ways he's posed and facial expressions he makes and things like that. Here we have a sheet that's showing the correct and incorrect way to draw Marge. This is from an early episode where she did some bowling, and you can see they specifically show the way her thumb interacts, the way her eyes should look, and things like that. Here are some examples of the way the Simpsons' feet should look with and without their shoes. Here we have some more details on how to draw Homer. Note they reference, the ratio of how tall he is by using these different spheres. They even make a joke about his body being shaped like a light bulb. All these things help the animators understand how to make the character move and walk and be proportionate. Here we have some Simpsons hands. Marge in space, ace, ace, ace. So this is showing, again, the ratio of the size of her face compared to her neck, different details about how to add her nose and mouth into the character, and other details like that. This is an example of keyframes. These are the key poses that Bart needs to stand in to do an action. Now, the in-betweeners, other artists would create dozens of other drawings in between each one of these positions. Here we have another sequence of keyframes showing Homer's tongue moving as he yells. This page contains a script for a little segment at the end of an episode of Masters of the Universe, which was a popular 80s cartoon show that talks about a little moral at the end of the episode. The script tells us that it fades in on an angle of the sorceress, and she says, "Today we saw people fighting over the Star Child." Then it dissolves to some footage from the show already. It tells us that we dissolve back to the sorceress, and she says, "It might surprise you to know that we all have a power like the Star Child's. You can't see it or touch it, but you can feel it. And it's called love. When you care deeply about others, when you're kind and gentle, that's when you're using this power. It's very magical indeed. Until later, goodbye for now." And then it says she transforms into Zoar and soars away, fade out. From that script, a storyboard artist created this. You have your title sequence, fade into the sorceress. She wears a bird-type costume. Crossfade into the footage of the two characters fighting over the Star Child. We have a few frames of that. Here you can see the glow of the Star Child's power. We crossfade back to the sorceress, and it's pulling out, based on those arrows, of her. Then she turns and looks. The shot changes, and you're further away. You can see her sitting in a chair. She stands up. She spreads the wings of her costume. Magic goes off, and she soars away as Zoar the bird. So after we have model sheets that show us what the characters look like, we have a script that tells us what the story is, and storyboards to show us what the shots look like, it's time to make the production drawings. Each drawing is done on paper that has registration pins on it here. You can see the artwork. It's done in black pencil. There are some blue notes and things. Those would not show up when the art is copied onto the clear cell. So here we have an actual animation cell used in an episode of Masters of the Universe. It says down here, MU for Masters of the Universe, stock, which means this is a sequence they used more than once, and 602, that would be this sequence, this image within the sequence. So this character, Orko, probably floated across the screen in this sequence, and his robe probably, wavered in the wind as he did that. This has been replaced digitally now with current animation. The artwork is drawn in the computer or drawn on paper and scanned into the computer, and they do the ink and paint digitally. But this had the production drawing photocopied onto the cell to create the black outlines, and it was painted from the back. There you can see how you lose all the detail. The paint is kind of thick. They call it flooding. They actually put down a heavy layer so they don't get any brush strokes in the paint. They don't pour it, but they load up their brush and put it on pretty heavy. And then when it dries and they flip it over, you have a nice crisp outline on your colored cell. Some animation scenes can be very complex. Obviously, there's no background here. This was a photograph I took of a series of cells, and the cat person king here was on one cell, but the cat female character here was actually made up of quite a few. So her body was one, probably because it didn't move at all in the scene. Her head was another one. There was probably minimal movement of her head. But her arms, her mouth, and her eyes are also all separate layers. Probably the mouth and eyes were what moved the most throughout the scene for her to blink, look around, and speak. Here's 4 cells from the She-Ra Princess of Power 80s cartoon show. You can see cell 512, 513, 514, and 516 here. This character of Shadow Weaver is standing up or sitting down from a chair, and you can see there's very little change from cell to cell. But when that goes by rapidly on the camera, it looks like she's moving. I have one last example here of this character. He's a walking, talking broom, and you can see they drew his body once and made multiple frames with his mouth so they could have him talk by switching out the mouthpieces, the layer that the mouth is on, several different times to create a walking, talking character. There's one more cell that ended on. This is one main character. A significant portion of his body must have been moving in this scene because they drew his entire body, so the next frame you would see in the show would be a total redraw of him. And there's one last chance to see how the cell's painted from the back, right? You see a lot of the detail is lost because it doesn't matter. They just flood the paint on there because the outlines are on the front. All right, thanks for checking this video out. I hope that helps you understand more some of the different processes that go into making an animated film.